This art house piece contains some spoilers for Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, El Camino, and Thomas the Tank Engine. Sure, yeah. Oh, okay.
I am awake.
Did Walter Hartwell White ever watch Thomas the Tank Engine? Breaking Bad is a highly critically acclaimed TV series that follows cancer-ridden high school chemistry teacher Walter White as he breaks bad and builds a methamphetamine empire. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends is a kid show about some trains. They do train jobs and pull stuff and go peep peep.
Beep, beep.
Yeah, like that. Also, they're kinda catty sometimes.
That's my home, replied Toby. That's why I like it, especially when you're there and not here saying I'm silly. Good night.
Both of these worlds are fictional and don't really exist, and I don't think they take place within the same world. The proof of this is in the Breaking Bad episode Dead Freight, where there is a train and it doesn't talk. The whole plot of that episode involves stealing chemicals from a train, and that would have been changed drastically if the train could talk. And if these tankers were sentient too, man, that whole thing would have never worked. Unless, the tanker was really troublesome and, they got him in on it or something. That's a good idea. Write that down. However, in Breaking Bad, there's a lot of colorful references to movies and TV shows. So it's completely possible that Thomas and Friends exists as a show like it does in our world. And it's possible that at some point before, after, or during Walter White's meth adventures that he could have watched an episode at some point. But how possible is it? When could Walt have watched the series or stumbled upon the franchise? Well, let's dive into that. I have a couple routes we can look at to answer this burning question. We'll go from least likely to most likely. Come along now. This'll be train freaking tastic. Or whatever, I don't know. The first thing to do is talk about Walt himself and see how Thomas's airing history falls into the Breaking Bad timeline. And first off, we better get this clear. Walter White was too old to grow up watching Thomas. He was born in 1958. Thomas wouldn't start airing in the United States until 1989, via segments on Shining Time Station on PBS. In 1989, Walt exited Gray Matter and sold his $5,000 share in the company. This would go on to become one of Walt's main motives in becoming the methamphetamine kingpin. I think it's safe to say it's very unlikely he ever checked out what was going on the kids block on PBS. I kinda doubt he was ever in the mood. Me personally, if I ever had a similar experience, I think seeing tiny Ringo Starr tell talking train stories on TV would really cheer me up, but Walt's kinda hard to get to. Also in 1989, Gus's partner Max Arciniega is shot in the head by Hector. No, silly, not Hector the Horrid. Hector the Horrid was a truck that was just misunderstood and he was afraid of being loaded with coal. He's not horrid at all. No, I'm talking about Hector Salamanca. He's a little bit troublesome.
Cabron, I need to see you a boss.
Yeah, so Max likely never got to even hear about Thomas, unless he somehow heard about the Railway series or the little British TV show that had been airing for 5 years before he was, shot in the head. Also at this point in time, Kim Wexler starts working in the HHM mailroom. That's cool. I don't really know if anyone there was talking about Thomas, though. Okay, just for fun, let's entertain the idea that Thomas and Breaking Bad are both real and in the same universe. Now, Thomas the TV series doesn't have a specific dated timeline, but the original books, the Railway series, does. So meanwhile, in the Railway series timeline, in 1989, Fred is built. Fred is a narrow gauge character who was never officially illustrated in any of the books, and he never made it into the TV series. I believe the little Audrey events that the Teleflin Railway does are technically canon to the Railway series lore, and at these events, Fred is a regular visitor. So if someone wants to take the picture of Heisenberg and show the real life Fred, you can make it canon that Fred knows who Heisenberg is. Maybe. I'm not too sure how that all works out. Anyways, back to Walter. Yeah, I think we can safely say that he never caught wind of the show of his own free will. He probably thought he was too cool for all that. I mean, just look at him. He wore a fedora and sunglasses. That dude thought he was the toughest guy in the universe. However, there is a significant figure in Walt's life who is a bit younger and who could have potentially watched Thomas at some point. Jesse is the younger of the Breaking Bad duo that helped cook and distribute the Crystal Blue all across Albuquerque. Kinda similar to how Percy delivers the mail, I guess. But unfortunately, Jesse is probably just not young enough to have been a Thomas fan. Jesse was born in 1984. While that is the year Thomas first debuted in the UK, it's 5 years before Thomas makes it to America. I mean, it is possible that Jesse could have caught Shining Time Station early on when he was like 5 to whatever age he stopped watching PBS, but I think I might have to go no, as there's nothing really strongly pointing one way or another. Not like there's ever gonna be for this question, but this just seems too far-fetched. I have one piece of evidence that I think goes against Jesse ever watching Thomas. It's not really strong, but it's a theory, and it's Jesse's knowledge of cows. In the Breaking Bad pilot, Jesse says this.
Got some big cow house way out that way, like 2 miles, but I don't see nobody.
Cow house?
This shows Jesse has a very clear lack of knowledge about cows. It's very basic cattle industry knowledge that cows live in a thing called a barn. Now, there's nothing in Thomas that mentions or really educates about, like, cow barns, at least that I remember, but there's plenty of material in the franchise related to cows. I mean, there's literally an episode called Cows. Like, that's the title, they called an episode that. I feel like if Jesse had grown up a Thomas fan, he'd likely know the basics about cows. And alright, so at this point in Breaking Bad, Jesse is addicted to drugs, so it's likely that messed with his brain. But yeah, we can't really say for sure, but I lean towards no on Jesse being a Thomas fan. I do, however, think that Jesse maybe could have seen at least bits of Thomas by proxy, likely from his younger brother, Jake. Jake is essentially the antithesis to Jesse Pinkman. He's a smart, up-and-coming academic weapon, and he's also a music prodigy. Now again, there is no official confirmation of this, but I have a theory. It can be estimated that Jake was born in 1996, which would have made him the ripe age to have gotten into Thomas. The movie Thomas and the Magic Railroad would have come out when he was 4 in the year 2000. While that movie was neither a critical nor box office success, it certainly put a big spotlight on the Thomas franchise and got its popularity up. So a 4-year-old in the year 2000 would most likely catch wind of Thomas. And like I said, Jake is a music prodigy. In El Camino, Adam and Diane Pinkman state that he is at band camp in London, which is quite the trip from Albuquerque. Also London, where sometimes Gordon goes? Now this isn't based on a statistic or anything. In fact, this is based on one YouTube video that I saw. But there is reports of some prodigies who love the music of Thomas from a young age. And I think we could have a possible connection here. So perhaps a high school age Jesse saw his younger brother watching Thomas at one point. Again, maybe, I can't say for sure. Maybe Jake got into music because of, like, I don't know, freaking SpongeBob. Regardless, this video is asking about Walter White. So, judging by what we know of Jesse, he probably doesn't ever talk about Thomas to Walt, and therefore never convinces him to start watching the show. But there are 2 people in Walt's life that, given the time they were born, they likely saw Thomas, and were maybe even interested. But who? Spoilers, it's his kids.
And I'm the baby!
Okay, so apparently Thomas is a franchise for little kids or something. So let's look to Breaking Bad's youngest kid character, Walter White's baby, Holly White. Holly was born on February 16th, 2009. The same day Walt made his deal with Gus Fring, and, you know, Mr. Birth. At this point in time, the weird model CGI hybrid Season 12 was being released on DVD in the US, so Holly came right at the end of the model era. And, well, so does the entire Breaking Bad universe. Holly is a non-verbal infant for the rest of Breaking Bad, so not really at a Thomas age just yet. Thomas is typically viewed by 2 to 5-year-olds. Polly is last seen in the series at just about a year and a half old, so not really there yet. It's entirely possible that she got into it after the events of the series, and maybe we'll see that being explored in Breaking Bad too, but again, this video is about Walter, who is dead. Walt died before his youngest could get into Thomas, and she'd probably go on to make Bad Wooden Railway Customs and also say that season 16 is like an underrated masterpiece. However, Walter White had another kid. So this here is Flynn the fire engine. He was introduced in the movie Day of the Diesels in like 2011. So he's like part fire truck, part like train fire truck. Like Flynn can like go on the railroad, but not Flynn can go on rail or road. This toy here doesn't really do it justice, but like he's got like the vagueness of like the train wheel parts there. But yeah, he's supposed to do like goes up and down on the train track. Him and Thomas know each other. Other than that, yeah, Flynn is not a very beloved character. He's recently passed away in the new series, and his son is taking up the mantle. But yeah, Flynn, yeah, he's fine, I guess. Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, yeah, Flynn. Not really sure if he knew Heisenberg before then, but we can assume perhaps. All right, let's talk about Walter White's son. Walter Jr., or Flynn as he likes to be called, is 15 years old at the start of the series on September 7th, 2008. This puts him to be born in 1993. Since Thomas came to America in 1989, Flynn would have been the ripe age for the classic era's popularity. It's safe to say he probably came across it as a kid, and therefore Walter White probably did too by proxy. And yeah, I'm gonna say yes. Walter White probably watched Thomas and Friends at some point, via his loving son, Flynn.
You got me.
Clearly, Flynn was one of those people who grew out of Thomas and instead watched Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Oh well, that show is cool.
Tonight, you.
Unfortunately, Heisenberg died in September 2010, on his birthday, September 7th, which was also the day that Misty Island Rescue released on DVD in the US. What a special day to end on. Okay, let's flip the question. Did Thomas the Tank Engine ever watch Breaking Bad? So let's put ourselves on the island of Sodor, where Breaking Bad exists as a TV show, just like in the real world. As I mentioned, the Thomas and Friends TV series is in a frozen 50s, 60s-esque eternity. But TV does exist, according to this line in the episode Ghost Train.
Neither do I. It was a pretend ghost on television.
Well, they did cut out this line in the US dub.
Neither do I. It was only a pretend ghost story.
So that makes it a bit weird. However, TV is confirmed to exist in both dubs of the show by the season 20 episode Tit for Tat.
They're even gonna write about me in a book and show me off in moving pictures on the television too.
Of course, we are still frozen in this vague, weird time period. We don't know for sure if Breaking Bad exists, and they probably were not going to reference it ever. However, we can look to the Railway series timeline. Here it's more likely that Breaking Bad the show exists, as the Railway series is a real-life reflection, just with talking trains and there's an extra island that got thrown into the Irish Sea. Thomas and all his friends still exist into the current year, so they would have been around for Breaking Bad. Except for Scruffy, he died. As you could guess though, Breaking Bad is never alluded to in any of the lore. The last book was published in 2011, about 2 weeks before season 4 had even begun to air. The author Reverend Wilbert Audrey died 11 years before Breaking Bad was even a thing, and we don't know if his son Christopher, who took up the mantle years before, has ever even seen the series. And you know, regardless of timing, they probably would have never mentioned Breaking Bad. Like, ever. But given the world they set up, I think we can say yes, Breaking Bad the show does in fact exist in this universe. So the question remains, could Thomas have seen it? Sodor in modern day is something not really alluded to often. It's confirmed to still be around and all the engines there are still steaming. But since Chris's retirement, there just hasn't been much. Which honestly, I'm fine with, because realistic Thomas in modern day requires suspending a lot of disbelief. Like, they're still using coal-burning steam trains for modern day rail industry work. Even if it is just tucked away on a little island, it still doesn't really make sense. I also think stories in modern day would probably just get boring because now all the popular characters are getting over 100 years old. They've probably run out of lessons to learn, and also you'd have to get into like immortality, and that'd be weird. Anyways, we don't have any idea what an engine's relationship to TV is. It's also something that's just not been alluded to. I feel like it'd make sense though if in the current day with streaming, engines know something about television, and probably have been exposed to it. In the popular Thomas fan series Enterprising Engines, they have a Netflix account at Croven's Gate, the main workshop for all the engines. And one, that's really funny, and two, it makes a lot of sense. This is a headcanon I'd absolutely subscribe to. Real-life steam engines do a lot of sitting and waiting around, so why wouldn't they give them something to watch in a universe where they're alive? But as for the true textbook canon, well, probably not. Wilbert Audrey was notoriously a huge realist. Seemingly for him, if it wasn't real and happening to a real engine, it couldn't happen. In real life, people don't put TV on for trains, so it's pretty unlikely that in the canon we do know that Thomas or any of the other engines would have seen Breaking Bad. Or really any TV series, or even movie for that matter. Anything's possible though. Perhaps one day Chris's son and current Railway series lorekeeper Richard Audrey will state that they installed a Roku into the sheds. To end on a good note though, I do think it is possible that Thomas at least knows something about Breaking Bad. Surely someone would mention it at some point, right? You know what's kinda weird though? Thomas and Friends the TV series, the one that we know, does exist in the Railway series universe. So if they did install a smart TV in Thomas's shed, they could put up the Thomas and Friends series, as well as Breaking Bad. And Thomas himself could ponder this insane question that I have also been wondering this whole video. Thank you to my Joe Swanson tier patrons, Aquamarina, Forgotten Lol Cow, Gingerboy20, Low, and the Goat Train. And thank you to all my patrons. Though few, these people keep this channel going. I hope you all enjoyed this little video. Comment what your favorite scene in Breaking Bad is, and then comment what your favorite scene in Thomas is, and then list 3 similarities between the two. Alright, see you next time, bye.